find us, pull us aside. Our next presenter is David Johnson. Here he is. David, as the founding member of San Francisco Studio, David is an accomplished designer who has demonstrated exceptional leadership during his 3-decade career. He has directed teams from concept design through client occupancy on an array of technically challenging and programmatically
complex.
Yes, many syllables. Intricate projects in the U.S. and abroad. David's portfolio includes master planning, interiors, sustainability, consulting, and architectural design for a range of large-scale urban planning projects and commercial institutional buildings. Please welcome David Johnson.
Thank you. I really wanted to laud Bill and SMUD, and you'll see why in my presentation, that these are choices and decisions being made upon principle and value. And it's beyond simple energy and donuts for dollars in an economical decision. So that was great. I wanted to just pose the first question because it's been a while since I've looked this statistic up. How many people can actually say how many ZME buildings there are in California? I think it was less than a handful last I looked. I think that I've done one of them and 3 undocumented. So maybe it's 10, you know, that are out there and just not documented. But one undocumented was a residence that got. Okay, yeah, that was published recently, but but that's important because we need models for people to see the possible. And so the 2 examples I'm going to illustrate here are, I think, examples for people to learn from, but they're also based upon value decisions, not simple economics. I'm not going to explain all of the project at NASA Sustainability Base. If you want, you can copy this down, or you can simply Google NASA Sustainability Base, and you'll see a very elaborate online presentation that they use to explain the building and the systems. And LBNL has an active project that they are documenting some of the performance since occupancy and the way that they're testing the project. So I'm not going to. They also have a very neat little diagram of the 99 geothermal wells that are on the playground, and I'm not going to show you much more about that either. But I want to talk a little bit about efficiency versus effectiveness, and this is good because we're about to go into lunch, and some of the slides I've chosen are going to be good for you. We need efficiency. We need all of the efficiency that we can possibly get. Let's just assume that. But what are we really trying to accomplish? That's the bigger question. If you relate that to food, and we're about to go to lunch, so this is kind of fun and play with you. If you relate that to food, if you're trying to gain all the efficiency in how you're feeding each other, cattle in this case, it's science. We know exactly what they need to produce beef for us, and if that's our goal, is to only be satisfied with efficiency, we start to look like that, and I like the cow in the middle. It looks kind of comfortable in this food. But I think what we're talking about here is going beyond efficiency and talking about, if our metaphor is food, let's talk about nourishment. And what are we actually trying to accomplish with that nourishment? When I prepare meals for my family, it's about family and health and wellness and happiness. And let's just play with this metaphor a little bit. So what do we value? If we treated our decisions in the building and in sustainable development, as we do this metaphor of nutrition, what do we value, and what are our values? I put this up. I don't think anybody would disagree that that's a pretty good set of values: and honesty, selflessness, sincerity, patience. But what are our goals, and how do we achieve them? If we go back to our metaphor of food, and we think about buildings, if we go back to our metaphor of food, we want local materials. We want nutritious and effective materials. We want materials that are pleasing and cost-effective with no waste and high quality. just like we would prepare a meal. But the other thing is it has to be state of the shelf. We can only use what's on the shelf to make that meal for our family. And so that's the other point, is that how are we going to use only the best things we can find around us to create and to support, to create our choices and to support those values. We start, this is, most people start at the bottom. They say, well, what is the EUI that you're looking for? Give me, I sat across the table from an engineer the other day. He said, what's the EUI? How small can we make the windows? And it's like, well, that's going to be a short conversation. You know, if all we're looking for is LEED or EUI, we'll start with metrics and tactics and strategies and goals. But if we start with our values, what are we actually trying to accomplish? What are our principles? What are our visions? We start from there before we drill down into metrics. We find a much more effective answer. And this is important because NASA came to us, by the way, I'm going to say right now, the building was built on schedule and below budget on a national schedule of costs. And it was, that budget was determined 6 months before we were hired. So, because the first question that comes up is, did it cost more? It didn't cost more. But I can't, what I want to circle here is everything in the environment is designed to support that. So these are talking about how their building is like what they do in space. Similarly, although sustainability isn't a spacecraft, it was created with the vision that everything about the design would support both human and planetary well-being. That's a value statement. And it goes on to say, the project is proof not only that this level of sustainability building is possible, but also that it is imperative to the health of our planet. So when you have a client that comes to you with that type of a goal, that's a pretty big ambition. NASA came to us. They talked about this building being engineered. They were going to be engineering solutions for Mars, but we said before you go to the red planet, you got to come to the blue planet. These are people that go to space, and they leave very careful footprints. Talk about footprints. They leave very careful footprints where they go. And these are the same engineers that we worked with at the start of the project were the engineers that developed systems to be in space. Where's our site? We're going to be made a place. We're going to understand the site and the climate. Well, we know this one pretty good. It's in San Jose, not far from here in Mountain View. Our project is at the bottom there. First thing that we told them when we engaged on this project was that they had the wrong site, so we had to move the site, keep to the same schedule. This is our project to the lower right. And you notice that if you know the winds in this climate, the reason why we chose the site is because we thought that to achieve their values, the building had to be prominent, it had to be solar oriented, and it had to take advantage of the winds. Let's gain all the efficiency we possibly can. So it's 2 narrow bars set into the landscape, 50-foot lee steps, very, very effective. Creates these little office clusters. And the building is built with quality materials that will last over time. We prefer cradle-to-cradle certified products because we think they're the highest quality in the world. Daylighting is incredibly important. The entire floor plate was designed to carefully study daylight dissection, as well as the water systems. They will use a fraction of the potable water, and what they will use is designed to be recovered through a black water system. The office environment, I'll go into this a little bit more. The office environment was, they adopted this, or we adopted this NASA strategy called scarring. Does anybody know what scarring means? Scarring is when you're going to send something into space, and it's incredibly expensive to send something into space, and you want to scar it to anticipate all of the things you're going to attach to that in the future. So the entire building is designed to be scarred to anticipate changes in future technology. And one of the key informants for us was the exoskeleton. If we could learn from the other buildings that they had done at NASA Ames, where the structure was moved to the outside of the building to create this vast interior spaces, how much flexibility would that gain? And once we moved the structure to the outside, it was then now part of the understanding of the building, and it took away the columns from the interior, but it also became an armature to mount the things that we wanted to on the outside, because in architecture, one of the most expensive things you do is trying to afford all these mounting positions for sunshades and living walls. But now we had our structure on the outside. Very efficient envelope with operable windows low and high. Insulated more than you would to address our cooling, mostly. And we have displacement ventilation as well as operable windows, low and high, to ventilate the space. Lighting is really important. By model, NASA anticipates they will need to turn the lights on 40 days out of the year. That's a good number. But to get there takes a lot of intelligent modeling. And we studied daylighting and glare quite carefully to tune the sunshades and light shelves and window controls, shade controls, to optimize lighting. So these are just some of the examples of some of the images that we use. And then lastly, we put, now we've made the building as efficient as we possibly can. And now we mount BIPVs and PVs on the roof. And we couple to a geothermal system, 99 wells on the parade ground that are used for radiant heating and cooling in the office environments. What does that yield? This is interesting. During one of the presentations, I opened up the old ASHRAE 90.1 calculation. Ballparking it, the reduction in heating, cooling, and fan and pumps energy in the ASHRAE calculation was we were consuming less than 20% of the base model because of the efficiency. But this shows our base case, which would be compliant with all of the strategies, would be the second bar. The third bar would be starting to go positive, net positive energy. What ended up happening is instead of building some additional PV cells as shade structures over parking, what NASA did is they got a lease with Bloom Energy for a next generation Bloom box designed to burn biomethane or consume biomethane. And they, with that, they are by far net energy positive. Our goal was 30%. They're over that now. The balance of the energy then goes back to the base. On energy, the director of the base was very smart. As you know, military sites benefit from WAPA power, which somebody knows the rate better than I do these days. WAPA power is significantly less expensive than PG&E power. So why would he go to all of the bother to put on PV panels and a fuel cell if you've got super low power rates? We said, well, if we're doing a 50-year building that's going to rely on mountain water hydropower, is that so smart for NASA? So they actually, they are not on WAPA power. Pretty interesting. This is the way the project looks, light and airy. This is the work environment with those. What's interesting is that to optimize with the radiant cooling, these are fairly inexpensive panels. To optimize, the panels actually become the ceiling, but then all the systems are visible and serviceable. We actually use them as uplighting just to bounce light off of. These are some of the skylights that are on the second floor. This is Steve Zornitzer and Bill taking a walk. I had to put in a mug for them. And then this is the way that the project looks on the outside. Sadly, the gardener trimmed the vines that were growing up because they thought they were weeds. On the verticals. But you see how effective the external frame was for mounting the sunshades and the BIPVs on the south side. You need clearance to see the project, but if you cannot, encourage it. PVs on the roof and the Bloom box. They didn't put this on the back side of the building. They put it on the very front of the building to show people what a Bloom box looks like. It's not so scary. Excuse me, I'm just recovering from a cold. Nike European headquarters, which is interesting about this, is that it was subject to a study. If you Google Nike European World Headquarters Energy Study, this is a building that was designed 20 years ago, was recorded in this independent study as one of the most efficient buildings in Europe at that time. 35% of the energy comes from geothermal coupling. And set in Holland, the building really relates to water. And what's interesting about the building, so if anybody wants to copy it down quick, what's interesting about the building is there's no air conditioning. It uses natural ventilation and thermal mass. The benefits of thermal mass here coming out. But the ground-coupled heat and cooling, this is a water retention for fire water, but it could have been used for coupling. It's not, interestingly. You from the outside. Water is so important on the project. But the fitness center, which is this building here, has a running track going over it, was part of the, was the main beneficiary of the ground-coupled heat pump. It was one of the only spaces that really needed some additional thermal cooling and heating. This is the running track in front. And this is the one of the fitness centers. And this is the building. It's still, I think it's still one of the highest performing buildings in Holland at this time. So I could have brought a number of examples of Z&E buildings. Just in close, we're very lucky to have great clients that are making decisions on energy, not just on dollars, not just on compliance or future-proofing. Those things are very important. But we're lucky enough to have clients that have a vision about the importance and the value of communicating to our children the importance of addressing this energy and carbon crisis that we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we're going to